Hello, friends. Welcome back to another edition of the PCS Podcast, the Pokemon podcast built by the community for the community. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron, and with me, as always, I have Michael joining us back from Baltimore. And at today's episode, we're going to talk about the first regional of the year, take a look at the meta breakdowns for day one and day two, maybe even go into some recaps of what I predicted what the meta might look like, go over the top cut matches because there were some big brain plays, and share overall thoughts of having four PCS members of the podcast in Baltimore. But before we jump into this episode, let's talk about your past week, Michael. You were there, your events leading up to us. So, how have you been since our last episode?
Yeah, it's been a really busy week. Obviously, was in Baltimore over the weekend, so the work week was pretty rough. Trying to focus on work while also grinding to make sure I was ready for Baltimore. But we made
Yeah.
it. We are close enough to drive. It's supposed to be a 4 hour and 40-ish minute drive, but DC traffic is awful, and so getting up there, I think it took us like 6.5 hours to make it to Baltimore on Friday morning. And same thing coming back Sunday, about 6.5 hours to get home. But we made it. It was pretty awesome. Let me share a picture. So we had a huge showing from our local scene here in Raleigh. We have a great crew of people. Shout out to Area Zero TCG. So we actually made it on stream in day two, which is pretty rad too. So this is not even all of us from the Raleigh area. Obviously Caleb Rogerson, Grant Manley, and some others. Nathan O are from the area. They don't get out and test with us as much, but shout out to this crew of awesome people. Rip to Javi in the top right corner, who got kind of cheated out of the picture a little bit. Javi's actually in the Discord here for PCS
Yeah.
too, which is awesome. Super great dude. But sorry, Javi, you got cut out. They kind of did you dirty there, but yeah, so it was pretty cool. I rode up with some friends, and we all kind of stayed in Airbnbs and hotels together. Got to do testing before, after, things like that too. So while I have the PCS community, it's also really great to have a local community too. So I'm really grateful for this crew of people. We kind of get to all have each other's backs too. So pretty awesome. Also along the way throughout the weekend, got to meet up with a lot of the homies from the Twitter community. Got to meet some people for the first time. Got to reconnect with people that I saw. And then also got to meet up with Steven, one of the PCS Patreon members too. Shout out to Steven for the awesome shirt. His wife made some shirts for us. Had some of our favorite Pokemon. I think Lugia is on there. Obviously Drago's on there. We got Sizor and some others too. So Steven, great to meet you. If you're listening to this, which I'm sure you are at some point, I'd love to hang out with you and sharing some snacks and some woes between rounds of some of the frustrations. But yeah, really great to get to meet them. But no, it was pretty awesome. For me, my event, it was okay. It didn't go as well as I wanted it or expected it to go. But at the end of the day, like after I had my pity party on Saturday night, I woke up Sunday, I was feeling refreshed, and I was like, this isn't the worst thing. I decided to run Lugia. I was about 2 weeks out from the event when I switched back to Lugia. Lugia's kind of like my safety net. It's where I'm always at. It's one of my favorite Pokemon. So I ran Lugia, and I had a really, really solid list. Me and my buddy Phil, we spent a lot of time kind of iterating on it, putting some twists to it, and like we'll talk about it a little bit later. But my list was just like one or two cards off from Kieran's, and I felt really good about it. I had a Thornton in the list, which was pretty rad. Like I was able to surprise some people with a Thornton play. I had a Lugia V knocked out in a Raging Bolt game. I was able to Thornton into my Lugia V into the V Star and come back as well. So some pretty cool lines with the list. Thornton's a cracked card. I hated it for the longest time. But yeah, we'll go ahead and jump into it just to show a little bit of my day. I won't go into super big detail, but I did
Yeah.
finish 3-3-3. I started out the day, and I should have seen this as an indicator of what my day was going to look like. But I started out against Miraidon in round one. And it's so funny. Shout out to my opponent. It was a super cool guy. We had the awkwardness of having to wait 10 extra minutes because there was some delays, which we'll chat about in a moment. But shout out to this guy. He was trying so hard to be polite, but also like try to get a little inside knowledge of what I was playing. He's like, "So does your deck seem to be doing well in Stellar Crown format?" I said, "Yeah, I guess so." and we turn it over. I flip over my card. It's a Lugia. he flips over his, and it's a Murata, and he looks at me. He's like, "So you like Lugia?" And I said, "Yep, sure do." And so we got going. So shout out to the guy. Little bit of yapping. It was fun to kind of get to put him in his place too. Always feels great to 2-1 him a ride on. But
So
yeah,
yeah,
no,
so you got the dub. So that's
yeah, I got
pretty
the dub there, and I was feeling
pretty awesome.
super confident. And then I got smacked immediately with hitting the surprise deck that apparently was not just the deck that I hit. A lot of people hit it. I hit it. This is a Mimikyu, but training court, I couldn't find Cornerstone. Again, they weren't thinking it was going to be relevant either. But this was actually Cornerstone Mimikyu. They had quad Cornerstone there. They had the Noivern and they had the Mimikyu. Game one, I lost just simply because I was trying to figure out the deck, and I ended up making a stupid play. One of the few misplays I can actually point out to in my weekend. I tried to attack with an Archeops, thinking it was Roblox Pokemon, but obviously it couldn't. So I said, "All right, cool, let's just scoop," because I spent so many resources to get to that point in that attack, and then I realized I couldn't do it. So I scooped, went to game two, had a much different game plan. I was attacking in with the Cinchinos, was able to do really well. And then game three, we started with about 6 minutes left in time. Obviously, because the control deck can kind of force you to go a little slower and force you to have to get those plays off a little bit more. So we ended up going to time, but had I not have prized 2 Cinchinos that game, it would have been a much quicker game. So I had 2 prizes left, and I was turn 3. So that it is what it is. Hit a Guardy the next round. So again, like I said, like when I look at other Lugias and I look at their runs, this was not very similar to theirs. Like a bunch of Lugias hit Drago after Drago to start their day, and of course, like that's a really great matchup for us. So definitely a bummer. Hit Guardy. Game one, I was so close to the win. I had 1 prize left. They had 4. They had 3 cards in hand. They needed to hit Countercatcher and a Dark Energy. They hit a Countercatcher and they hit an Earthen Vessel off of Refinement. They were able to Countercatcher up my fish, and then they were able to, before they did that, they were able to Monkey Dory to a damaged bear that I had on, and they took 4 prizes in 1 turn, which was a big bummer. And then game 2 was literally the only time the entire day where I didn't get double Archeops. So people who hate on Lugia for not being a good deck and not being consistent, my deck set up every single time except for that one game too. So that was pretty rad. Hit an Ancient Box the next round. Was feeling kind of bummed about losing to Guardy in an Ancient Box, and I couldn't be mad about this one. This dude just literally had it all. Turn 2, both games was swinging for 240, and my guy just crushed me. Like I got absolutely wrecked by him, and there was literally no way to be mad about it. But afterwards, like this set probably lasted 15 minutes. Like that's how fast my guy destroyed me.
Wow.
So I left the venue, walked across the street, got some Starbucks, got to watch some football because I had plenty of time to do all of that. So I got to recuperate, and then I hit a Drago finally in round 5. That was a pretty swift win there. Ran into a Lugia the next game. This one was crazy. I prized Legacy Energy all 3 games, which is mind blowing to me. And then in game 3, I prized Legacy Energy, I prized Iron Hands, and I prized Weird Ear. So very unfortunate prizing, but my opponent was great. We both had a really good set. Game 3, I forced him to go to single chops. We kind of played the slower game there too. We kind of both had unfortunate prizing, unfortunate setups. He overbenched, and I took advantage of that while I tried to get set up and didn't allow him to go double chops. The next played another Drago.
Don't take a price card. Don't take a price card.
Exactly.
Punish their mistake. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I like it.
So I just kind of avoided it. Unfortunately, like, and Steven was actually watching that game too, and afterwards he's like, could you have tacked a little sooner? And I was like, maybe so, but like then that gives him the chance to set up when I'm not quite where I want to be just yet. So it could have been maybe I go a little faster and potentially finish, but it was one of those where I knew Legacy was prized, so I didn't have the Iron Hands play. I couldn't take 3 prizes somewhere. Like I already knew my prizes were unfortunate, so I was trying to play a slower game at that point. But still, obviously, playing fast. Like I'm not slow playing my guy. It's just the way that it went. Like things like that. Hit a Drago, did the thing. Round 8 was probably the most frustrating match that I had. Game 1 was pretty solid against Raging Bolts. Game 2, they just kind of did their thing. And then game 3, the opponent, super nice guy, but definitely slow played. Had a little bit of a poker background to him. Their ability markers were monogrammed poker chips. So definitely a Pokedad, a little bit older than me and you as Pokedads, but could definitely tell her some slow play. Had a judge kind of come look at the situation. And game 3, we started with like 7 or 8 minutes left, and I was like, "Hey, dude, like we got to pick it up a little bit so that we can maybe finish this game." Um, didn't quite happen. Like every time he would look at his cards after he would draw some things, he'd like have a little grimace about it and all that. So again, it is unfortunate. This is something I'm gonna have to figure out, like how to push my opponents a little bit more to pick up the pace. But we finished in time. I was turn 3, and I had 1 prize left to their 6 prizes. And it was just unfortunate that the win didn't go my way. And at the end, he's like, "Hey, I'm so sorry I slow play." I was like, "Yeah, cool, good game. Let's move along." I didn't really want to chit chat much.
Yeah.
And then the heartbreaking finish against another Bolt. I had an awesome game 1. Game 2, Raging Bolt did Raging Bolt things. And game 3 was going so well and in my favor. And the only way that my guy got the win was at the very end, did what Raging Bolt does best, threw down 3 Pokemon catchers, hit tails the first 2, and in a heartbreaking fashion, he was able to hit heads on his last Pokemon catcher. And because I had a weirder in the active with the legacy energy, so he couldn't knock that out,
Oh,
or else he
sure.
didn't.
Yeah.
Because I had Bear in the on the bench, so like all I had to do was promote Bear and win after that. So he was able to get the gust. He hit the heads and took the win, and it was such a heartbreaking finish there. But yeah, no. Overall, again, I don't have too much to be mad about. As you can see, this is a very unique matchup roulette of decks that Lugia could have hit compared to some of the others out there. But again, I can't be mad. I'm pretty happy that I can pinpoint a few of the misplays that I had, and overall, I've just got to figure out how to work the time a little bit more in my favor, to where I can perhaps finish those 3 games, because all 3 of those that I tied were very much winnable games for me as well. So we could be looking at a much different record at the end of the day had I been able to turn those ties to losses too, so or to wins as well. So can't be too mad about it. Had a lot of fun. Yeah, playing Pokemon. There are plenty more regionals to go, so I'm pretty confident moving forward into the future. But yeah, I'll shut up talking now with my run. That was always good to recap that. But yeah, it was a good weekend. I'm looking forward to having some time now to focus on Stellar Crown and
Yeah.
all that good stuff. How about you, man? I know I talked a lot, so let's hear about your week. Obviously, you weren't there in
Yeah.
Baltimore, but you've been prepping for Louisville.
Yeah. No, I love it. Anytime we can have, one of us or people in the community obviously be at a regional, it's a lot more fun just to hear their stories, because you incoherently start becoming fans of theirs, and trying to figure out how things are going, doing the old control F on the arcade 9 pairings of going to find where are they going through, how they went. So yeah, so last week I we did the pod and everything, and then we went up north to a cabin that basically is much more of like a fishing type of resort cabin, not like a vacation home with AC and Wi-Fi and everything. But so much needed R&R time, just a lot of quality time with my parents. My brother also was up there as well too, and then my wife and our son. So kind of was nice to get away. Did not have as much time, for poke as much last week. It was much more kind of an R&R, but was able to get back Saturday night and binge watch day one. Was able to get through all that at a very very fast clip of literally skipping and going right to the match, playing it at 1.5 speed. So they the deck list or the deck checks and everything went a lot quicker than what it actually is in real time. But
Yeah, you're
and
right.
then just opening Stellar Crown, I didn't go crazy wild buying a bunch of stuff. Just 2 booster bundles, an ETB and a booster box. Just trying to go through. Basically, got everything of what I needed besides the EXs. But even
Nice.
then, I don't really know Pokemon wise if that's in a consideration of the decks that I'm considering as of right now. But obviously, going to let those prices kind of decline over here the next few weeks before having to order anything.
Yeah.
But just trying to get organized. Did a lot of bulk, organizing Saturday night, and then Saturday or Sunday as well too. Having it on and just trying to get more organized so I can start to put together deck lists to test, because I'm took notes from all the interviews that I did, but specifically Dre as well too,
Yeah.
of maybe not always having enough time to get on live or do something in through. So it's like, well, I always have a card table and I always have decks built. So it's like if I could just run the opening sequence of whatever Reggie Drago into to Lugia or whatever the case may be. Obviously, the Palkia Tropicos isn't really showing up much at all, but like specifically Raging Bolt and Zard is just a matchup that gonna just need to continue to test of what it looks like. Those kind of opening hands and just getting practice in that way. And then Carlos was a Saint, and I could have played, but I had to be on the hotspot, so didn't really know exactly how that would go in terms of playing. So he was a Saint and was like, "Hey, I'm around all weekend just watching football and stuff." So we hopped on and played yesterday. I
Nice.
played Reggie Drago and he played Zard. And I was like, "This is fitting because I need practice against this anyway because we're still in the Shrouded Fable format." And lost 1-2 there. Game one was good, right? Consistent, was able to do things, and it's always close with Zard because they can start hitting big numbers and counter catchers and everything. But I was able to do what I needed to do. Game two, complete dead drew.
Yeah.
Nothing. Basically, it was just dead. And then game three was close. We both, I'll say, like, I won't blame it on my misplays or his, but we didn't get the right resources at the right time. So we thought we had something because we both were just chatting casually as we do. This is what I always appreciate
Yeah.
about the PCS community is like, we're still both trying to clearly win, but it's in such a casual and we're talking just normal stuff while we're playing and it's not silence. And it's just like, oh yeah, I'll promote this because I just, I just draw and I attack. And I was like, oh wait, I don't have any fire energy left, and I need to hit a super rod in a vessel or something like that. And not seeing those, and it's like, oh, cool. I'm just now stranded, and he can start to do things as well too.
Yeah.
So um, it was fun. And then we talked a lot about just Louisville in general because obviously he's going to be there, and I think I'm going to have to hitch my I'm gonna hitch to his wagon, right? Because he's like, oh yeah, he's like, I'm going in guns blazing, like I'm testing and everything. So I was like, I'm gonna probably have to hitch to you a little bit and help get some of the data that we needed. So we talked about that.
Nice.
So it was a good weekend to get away. Beautiful weather, up north in Minnesota. Lake was beautiful. The only cruddy thing is as nice weather means the cabin gets really warm during the day. So it was a lot of very warm nights without needing even a bed sheet or anything. So by 3 a.m., it
Awesome.
finally the temperature of the cabin cooled down where it
Cool down.
felt comfortable. But yeah, I'm never going to complain about being around a lake or body of water. That's I'm 36, and basically every single vacation, our parents took us to a lake in Minnesota and fished. So I think as I
I
get
bet.
older now, I find my vacations are usually around bodies of water with not very good cell reception, but that is okay because I deal with people a lot in my daytime work. Not that I don't like people. Certainly love the PCS community, but anytime I can kind of get away and the phone becomes a paperweight, it's just kind of a good refresh for all of us to keep in mind. So, and
Yep.
with that, let's go over Baltimore itself as the venue. See, it's a revisit. We didn't play it in last year's season, but the season, the first full season after COVID, obviously it hosted a regional. Kind of maybe didn't go as well. I know it was in the same venue, but I know the deck space was a lot bigger. So, being boots on the ground, what was it like, Michael? What did you see?
Yeah, let's be a little. I'll put on my field reporter hat here. Um,
Yeah.
Overall, I mean, Baltimore is Baltimore. I'll let you decide how to interpret that statement there. Personally, it's not my favorite city, but not the worst. I love Camden Yards, things like that. So it's pretty cool. The place was popping this weekend. Bruce Springsteen was in town on Friday night.
The
So I think,
boss.
yeah, Bruce Springsteen is in town. Obviously, the Raiders came to town too, so you had some Raiders fans in there to cheer them on against the Ravens too. So Ravens football, our stuff. So downtown Baltimore, Inner Harbor area was popping. Overall, the venue was really spacious. Had plenty of space and arguably perhaps too much space. Things were pretty spread out. When you walk in from like the main street on Pratt Street and you go down, you kind of walk straight in and you see the stream area, which was cool. Like it had its own designated space and it was pretty detached. So like as a TCG player, it was really nice to not hear the clink, 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 clink of Pokemon Go all day. Um, but to be fair, it was quite a walk. So Yeah, it was. I don't know. The placement of everything was a little bit awkward. You walk in. One of the first things I noticed was the prize wall. But it was probably one of the. I mean, like I don't know. I don't know what the situation was, but it was probably one of the wimpiest looking prize walls I've seen at any event that I've been to. I actually didn't play any sides this year. Left around lunchtime on Sunday, and did some cubing and retro gaming with some
Oh,
homies
cool.
on Sunday morning. So I didn't do any of the events. Didn't intentionally didn't sign up for the cup and all that. So it wasn't really of interest to me. But I do know that the prize wall was pretty lacking from what I saw and from what I've heard from others. But overall, like I said, the venue is really solid. With one caveat, which we'll get to in just a moment. Um, Food options were pretty good. You know, you're paying $5 for a bottle of water or a bottle of Coke and things like that too. But plenty of bathrooms. And yeah, overall decent. However, and I've got a picture pulled up here, so let me switch over to the screen really quick. Um, this one just makes me laugh. But Jay Horsefall, I don't really know who Jay is, so shout out to Jay. Had a picture I found that says "Memorial to the Fallen," and I'm gonna go on a limb to think that it wasn't just these 6 chairs that you see here that
Probably a
ended
few
up.
more.
I would say a few times a few. Dude, it was so bad. Like these chairs, I mean, you can tell. Like you can look at this picture and you can just see. I'll zoom in on a little bit. You can just they're rusted, they're janky. It looks like people. These chairs have seen some things. Let's just put
Hmm.
it that way. Um, and I personally got to firsthand witness one of these cracking. And like, if you look in the comments, I saw it somewhere. It says hearing the crack and then looking over to see the judges rush over to the person getting up off the ground was definitely an experience, and it's very true. That same picture I shared with you here, just moments before this picture was taken, we heard that same cracking sound, and then I look over and a dude is on the floor, and sounds really bad, but it gave me like the Peter Griffin moment of the kind of thing. But like it
Heard a
wasn't.
shin. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Fortunately, they were okay. They had people there, but like the fact that these chairs were breaking on people was so bad. Like this was actually like, though I'm making light of it now, extremely unacceptable of the fact that like like just not safe. Like I've heard and seen things on Twitter of people mid game having the chair break on them, and like imagine what that does to you mentally too. Like you're kind of like phased at that point from like falling on the ground and perhaps dropping your card. Like it's just crazy to me. Like the venue,
It's
like Pokemon paid them a good bit of money, and then they provided us with these absolute garbage chairs.
Yeah,
It's
it's
wild to
wild
me.
that like how do you not just have like straight up metal, the full seat metal chairs, right? Like those
Yeah,
aren't that
yeah,
expensive as well too. I know like the newer ones like the Lifetime like really nice chairs with kind of
right.
that to go through, but like even for this it's bizarre that they just don't straight up have like just metal folding chairs that actually
Yeah.
how about this would fit most walks of life
Yep.
of
Yeah.
people, and I say that as someone who has gained a lot of weight since having a kid, from where I was at when I got married and everything, but like these aren't
They're not.
appropriate for
Yeah.
2400 players to be sitting
No.
in, like, and especially how dirty and grimy they look. Like that is how yeah, it just goes back to college of event organizing because I did communications major and that was
Mhm.
a class I just had to take. But it's like, how is there a quality control check that it's like, wait, these are the chairs that we're getting provided by the venue? Hold up,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. We're getting money out from you to do this because this is not to the standard that
Yeah.
we go through. So that is unfortunate. And thankfully, hopefully everyone was okay. That
Yeah. Hope so.
obviously,
I
yeah,
haven't
gone
seen
through.
anything, but who knows, man? There's with that
Yeah,
many people. But yeah, no. Hopefully TPCI finds a way to get some. I don't know. Like I know TPCI didn't pay just chump change here. Like so, I think that there
yeah,
needs to be something done. But yeah, so besides that, overall pretty solid. Gaming Gen, this was Gaming Gen's first major event, and with a few hiccups here and there, overall it didn't really feel to me any different than other majors that I've been to. I know I've seen you know differing opinions on that, so we'll leave it to those. But for me, it didn't feel too drastically different. In fact, I was actually kind of impressed. Like day one, there was a massive line. Like, I even got coffee, but like they had a separate line of people who had not had a chance to register. And there was a massive line, and so it held us up about 10 minutes. But like the fact that it only held us up 10 minutes for round one was actually quite impressive. I know people were like sprinting into their tables and make like they were just running late, so like obviously that added some stress. But I do want to commend them for making it happen. But
How
again,
was the round timing like between round one to round two to round three? Like, do you feel like that went at a decent clip?
yeah, no, absolutely. No lunch break either, which to be honest, I'm a fan of. I don't hate that
Yeah.
there's not a lunch break. Like I like we still. I mean, I don't think we finished round nine until like close to 8 o'clock. So like it still was a long, long day. Um, but no, I think the clip was pretty good.
Okay.
Obviously, you got to deal with people going to time, and then obviously like when people go to time, they tend to lax a little bit and take their time again. Like they're not
Oh
in as
yeah.
big of a rush, right? So like you can't control that. But yeah, no, the clip was good. I had plenty of time to hang out in between. Some of my rounds obviously went to game three, and obviously to time as well. But no, not bad. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of all my gist of it too. I know you're gonna chat about it too, but the stream production area we kind of mentioned was cool. Like to its own space, it was nice to not have to hear the like I said the clinks and stuff like that. But Aaron, just from your perspective, as someone who wasn't there, what were your thoughts on how stream and everything went there?
Yeah, hearing that the Masters specifically were, I shouldn't say in their own hall, but basically own subsection of the
Yeah,
rented out, the hall
absolutely.
space was pretty cool. And I had a local from Minnesota that's a dad as well too that I've gotten to be friendly with when I traveled to Minnesota. Every couple months to play, and I've always have liked chatting with him and everything. And he sent a picture as well too. He's like, "This is just for Masters,"
Yeah,
and he was so far away from the actual chairs. And then it was like later that night on Friday that someone actually posted one of the chairs, and at first it was just where the switches were
everyone posted up.
for VGC, so I didn't realize that it was also for TC, the whole space in itself. But specifically just watching the stream, we talked about it after the Worlds. They kind of had the new overlay, which was really good. And I don't know if I want to give them credit of looking for the community feedback, but it seemed like they were zoomed out a little bit more. So I could actually see some hands this time, where you could actually see their six cards, seven cards, whatever they had in their hand. So you're able to kind of piece together some plays that you might predict them to do. I couldn't always see that, but it seemed like the casters were pretty good about like specifically Kyle Sablehouse of saying, "Oh, this hand is cracked. He's got Bing Bong Boom,"
Right.
and then it's like, okay, at least that helps. Whereas Worlds, you had no idea what they were playing, right? How cracked their
Yeah.
hands was or how awful it was. So it did seem like they took an approach, and maybe it's just the space in Baltimore versus Hawaii, just them having a taller ceiling or whatever, the cameras just being up a little bit. I thought it went well. Some newcasters that were on scene, obviously, some weren't there, but we had some faces reappear, and some just newcasts as well too. I thought they did a good job. Again, I was binge watching or speed watching day one, so I didn't really see a lot of the chatter they went through. Day two, the only really big blemish in my eyes was we had the final round of Swiss where Ian Robb, won versus Control, and it seems like whenever he plays Control, like he just always has the nuts. But he's a very, very good player,
Yeah.
and
One of the
he
best.
balled out. Just he balled out and dominated. And so I went back and looked through, because I was telling you about it before we got on. And I was like, let me actually go back and like just scroll through. And I went through, and it was an hour and 15 minutes before we got to see someone else play. And then it was Rowan versus Henry in Top Cut, which was the 4 versus 5 seed, which we'll pull up a little bit later. Um, then after that, things through, they showed 3 top 8 matches, which was, or no, 2 top 8 matches, and then one of the top fours, and then the finals. But it was pretty cool of going through. I thought, again, it overall went well. It's just, especially since day two, I was watching it more live. Maybe only like an hour behind or 2 hours behind schedule versus like binge watching it, and just skipping through everything. But it was like, for me, noticeable. I was like, how is there not a matchup? And then it kind of dawned on me now. But I think it went well. And then shout out to, like I said, we had a good group of PCSers there. Steven got a special shout out, and props to his wife as well too. Uh,
Yeah.
she did all of this in the matter of like less than 1 week.
Yeah,
So
dude,
the
it's
fact that
crazy.
you have this shirt and going through, and he asked me some stuff, and he's like, "Well, she already spec'd out." He's like, because he asked, what are some of the Pokemon that mean the most to the PCS community? So I should,
Yeah.
said Lugia because I know that was yours, and then I had to said Wooper if you can figure out Wooper and Scizor
Oh yeah, I
for
forget
the
Whooper's there
past.
right there in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah. So he included that, and then I
Yeah.
said, "I'm like, dude, Scissor's one of my favorites." But I was like, Kingdra. I was like, it just depends on the day of the week. And I was like, Raichu's a pretty popular one within the community. And he's like, I already told her Regidrago. I was like, I'm good with that. I was like, I still like Regidrago
Yep.
as a Pokemon itself. It's just that was always kind of been my deck that I've clung to ever since I kind of got more into the scene. But yeah, Andrew played. So he played his homebrew Toadscruel EX deck, which was pretty cool. So shout out for him just to playing his list, right? Like no one else is playing exactly what he's playing. Obviously, there could have been a Toadscruel out there. I don't know, but he went 4-2-3, and then Gary, who's a newer member that joined, he actually got to 6-2 with his version of Regidrago, and he had a win it in, and fortunately hit Guardy. And if you're not playing a jamming tower to get a free KO, that matchup
Yeah.
is nearly impossible. And
Yeah.
especially post NAIC, I was even playing two jamming tower in my Regidragos because before Kirim came out, like that was literally the only way to possibly get it to a 50-50 with Guardy. So I thought it was fun. I think we're going to jump over to the meta breakdowns. So if you have the day one meta breakdown,
Yep.
and
Sure
then let
do.
me go over to famous words. So in on August 28th, we had a really lively discussion within the Discord of what decks are going through. So I'm going to say all the way back in August, right, of what things we're looking at. So it's very funny. So I'm going to read off what I said, right? And I was like, hey, off the cuff, I'm not looking at limitless data right now. This is just what my gut feels from what I see on Twitter, what I've talked about with you and guests on the podcast, and just overall where some of the results are showing in the online. And I said, all right, here's what I think. Drago, I think we're looking at 16 to 17%, 17.22 for the actual day one share. Number two, we have Ogrepon and Raging Bolt. I said this feels like around like a 15% deck. 1501 is what that went through. I said I feel like Zard is going to be 3, and I said maybe 12 to 13%, like kind of give or take, because that was kind of before, going through it. I was like, it feels like that's going to be number 3. I was off. It got to 14% in the actual meta share. And then I said Ancient Box, and I was like, I feel like this is going to be number 4. And I famously now said, because at first I thought I said 10%, but I said this could be close to 11 to 12. And that was, I think, Ancient Box kind of peaked a little bit too early, where it was all the
Yeah, for
rage.
sure.
And then when Jesse talked about like, hey, it's a lot slower deck in person because people aren't going to trust your counts and they're going to want to count. So he's like, it goes through. But I was close. Andrew and I had a fun bet of just does it get to 10% or not. It was famously close. We're looking at maybe 20 to 30 other people playing it to get over 10s, but it was at 9.35. So I'll eat my own words. Andrew, please send me DM me for my address, and please send me your Virginia Tech. I'll gladly wear it at Louisville one of the days that I'm there. And then I just said the rest is a smattering. I was like, throw in a Guardy, throw in a Lugia, and maybe some Rhydon or Moon. They all kind of just come in, and you can see that Lugia. Now this is obviously kind of going through it as Lugia to me feels like that week before it kind of got a nice little head rush going through because they had some good results. And I think really with the Worlds, I think the list just kind of got refined. Like Despal and Lugia just makes sense because you want as consistent setup as
Chef's
possible.
kiss.
So yeah, exactly. So I appreciate the Worlds players kind of going through because Lugia is kind of in my thought process of possibly Louisville because I have someone like yourself that's played it a whole bunch and some other people in the Discord that played it a whole lot more. That I haven't played it. I played a lot of single strike, Lugia. But I
Yeah.
haven't played. I have the cards right, and I've always appreciated because Primal Turbo is one of the best, best abilities ever printed on a Pokemon card, and then we go to unclassified, right, where it's just like there's so much stuff we don't really know, but basically other is now the meta share, and I think later they showed on. So like I was really close with my meta calls, man.
Yeah, no, that's
And
pretty impressive.
it felt good. So and I know with Worlds, and I know we kind of did the deck list with Jesse, but I was like I said, I was like, I'm gonna let Jesse do his thing because
Yeah.
he's the guest and one. He's just a superior player and stuff. So I think we did well with him of kind of going through. I just think the it's the percentages, right? I feel like I very good, like kind of always feel like 1 through 5 is just the exact percentages going through, but I'll give
Right.
some props to our community because we had a very lively discussion that I was looking at the 28th, and we chatted for quite a while in the Discord that night of joking off. There's some funny memes, and then there's a vote and everything. So I
Very
think
cool.
the day one went through, and if we want to bring up the day two, we have
Yep.
the graphic first. So then the day two graphic, we saw conversion wise for Reggie Drago, it was at 17.22 and it went to 17.05. So still, pretty much the number one deck in day two, or it was the number one deck in day two. We see your deck choice, Lugia, come all the way up to almost 14%. We had 18 decks make day two.
Yep.
So props for you of being on that. Charizard didn't convert as well. It dropped down to 10%. Agent's box stayed almost exactly even. We're talking like one deck
Yeah.
list. It was, and I should preface this of with the day two uh, rules, or I guess the rules and conversion. Getting to 21 points, day two, there's a lot less players now. So we're talking 129 total decks, whereas
It's just
last year I
wild.
think we were getting over 200 players in day two in some of the results. So I say this with there was just a lot less decks that are going to convert to day two now with the
Yeah.
rules that they have in place. Agent box, there's 12 that converted, so 9.335 or 9.3 exactly. So it's like we're literally talking is basically exactly the conversion, and then unclassified, and then we saw obviously Snorlax control, which we talked a little bit about on the pod with Jesse, that rounded out
Yep.
the top deck at just under 8%.
Yeah, and
And
one
then we
one
have
quick
the go ahead,
one quick
yeah.
call out too. So we know this in hindsight now, but this unclassified was the surprise deck that we saw so many running and actually made a massive run. It's the
Oh, the
Cornerstone Ogrepon.
cornerstone,
Yep.
yeah.
So obviously, I think there might be a few sprinkled in that might be listed as unclassified, but I'm almost confident now that that 12 unclassified might actually be the Cornerstone Ogrepon list, and it just didn't have. No one expected it really. So yeah, kudos to those
Yeah,
who were brave enough to do it. So yeah, I think
and I
that's what it is.
and I think obviously you probably didn't hear it, on the ground, but on the stream they talked about that uh, a fan favorite of the PCS community, a Cyrus Davis, shared
Yep.
the deck list with a whole bunch of players, and that's what
Yeah,
brought it,
so
and
crazy.
obviously it did very well because we did see it make a top cut. If you quickly want to pull up PCTG Legends for like the conversion rate, this is really cool data. At first, I thought PCTG Legends was getting taken down, so maybe there was a community like GoFundMe to have Alex keep running, or maybe
No, I think this was the intention, was to shut it down temporarily to bring it up to speed. So fortunately,
okay,
yeah, because
okay,
I love it for retro, but I don't
yes,
think this kind of stuff existed in this capacity. So I think that's why they broke it. They took it down for a while.
okay,
But yeah,
okay.
yep.
So that makes me feel a whole lot better because when I was looking at just trying to find some day two data for us to bring up and discuss for the podcast. I saw this and I was like, wait a second, I thought this website was taken down. But I was like, I'm glad it still exists. So it is really cool to see like the conversion rates here. And I would preface this of anyone that's really trying to deep dive into meta to make those meta calls and trying to figure out what decks to go through.
Yeah,
It's really cool to see just the results by the deck of showing kind of exactly where it goes through. So shout out to having this data, but you really do see that Snorlax control, even though it was played very infrequently, the people that actually did bring it, which was probably not very many decks, we did see it massively convert into day
absolutely.
two, right? So we saw
Yeah,
10 total decks make day two, which is a big number, right? Because we talked about just under 8%. But in terms of probably total number of Snorlax controlled decks that actually played, like maybe it was only 20 to 30 total people played it. So that's just why it looks like on the graph that it's so high, is because of that exact reason. Because does that say what's the exact number there, Michael? Sorry, it's just a little
yeah.
blurry.
It's I know it's a little small here. 24,
It's okay.
almost 25%.
Okay, so
Yep.
yeah, that goes through. So it's cool data to have. I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
in terms of looking at where things finish, because if we even just look at day two of the number of decks, you see Guardy 6, right? So it didn't make the graphic on there.
Yep.
But boy, did it the top cut line up very well for certain
Absolutely.
certain a couple deck lists for Guardy. So really cool
Unfortunately.
stuff. if you want to pull up, so this was cool with the asymmetric cut. We had a total
Yeah.
of 10 players, which I think we
Also, real
have.
quick too, I think one thing that
Yes,
needs to be studied is Raging Bolt and its meteoric failure.
yes. Oh, yeah. That
It's so
completely was
crazy.
not
Yeah.
viewed in anywhere,
Yep.
um,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and everything. So yeah, so I was and Charizard was there, but it really didn't really make too much of a scene in Top Cut, and obviously Raging Bolt was nowhere to be seen whatsoever. So it was cool, and this is something new with this year that we've discussed a couple of times now is this asymmetric cut. So we had 10 total players going through. So we had 7 versus 10, playoff, and then we had 8 versus 9 for a playoff as well too. But we see Rahul with going very very well with Lugia and his take, obviously running it back after Worlds. We saw Emmett Hurley play a Turbo Roaring Moonless. And then this is where you talked about the surprise of the tournament, the Cornerstone
Yeah.
Mask and Noivern EX, and even with some Snorlax techs as well too. So Nolan Randall make that, and then certain Henry Chao that is kind of became an overnight sensation after NIC with their list of Gardevoir, running it back and going undefeated. During the day, and obviously we'll get into that. And then your normal couple Reggie Dragos that make it,
Yeah.
couple Lugias as well too. So it felt really fun because there's some really big names there. So like Rahul is well known. Henry Chow, I would say, is more well known recently going through. And then Ian Robb is obviously a huge name. Shout out to a fellow podcaster in Kieran Farah of the Shift Gear podcast, and then Rowan, obviously as well too. So 2 Canadians there as well too, or 3 Canadians
Yeah.
if we count.
Yep.
Yeah, with Nolan. So shout out to him because it felt like these top cuts, right? You want to see the players as well too. The decks are always cool, but it's like seeing top players play as well too is always something
Right.
that I know other community members have talked about. It's like it's more fun when you. It's just like sports, right? The LeBron James is going to get the TV fanfare and stuff like that is because he's earned his spot to be in the limelight. So it was a fun top cut. Were you there for top cut? You said you left Sunday morning.
Yeah, no, I left Sunday morning around noon. So I actually had this. It's always fun. Like when I travel on sports days or Pokemon days, things like that. I always have it on and just have it
Oh
in
sure,
the car as just like audio. So I got to like listen into it, kind of like I would listen into any of my like sports things like that. So it's always kind of fun. So I didn't get to see some of it, but I did get to watch some of the later ones because I was already at home at that point too, which was nice. So
yeah.
I'm grateful for that. So got to watch the finals and got to also watch the Emmett versus Kieran as well. So
Oh
got
sure,
to watch some of them.
yeah. And being on the ground and playing going through, we talked about a little bit about the Cornerstone Noivern. Was there anything else that because you at least the places I've gone through, you kind of hear around the tables, right? As you're kind of playing throughout the day, you're like, oh, did you see so and so is playing this or etc. Or specific archetypes? Is there anything that just kind of jumped out to you before we kind of go over the top cut decks and everything?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. And I won't go into the Ogrepon as much, but it's funny because like here I was hitting it round two. Obviously, it wasn't the same. It was someone. I hit a Pokedad in round two. His shirt even said Pokedad on there too. But he was playing the Cornerstone deck. He had Mimikyu in it though, which is different than what we saw in Nolan's list. He actually, if I remember correctly, I want to think maybe I'm misremembering, but I think he had 4 Mimikyu. I could be wrong. Maybe it was just 3, but he had more than 2 because there were
Okay.
more than 2 benched at a time, which is kind of annoying. But yeah, no, it's kind of funny to see that I got to witness that. Another one that was pretty big, and let me actually switch over to that really quick, was this Cloth Electro deck. This was one that was kind of surprising. Like, we kind of, I know you and I were chatting, and we're like, wait, Electro didn't rotate, but it actually didn't. It's still current standard. But this is a variant of some things that I saw along the way with the new Petrarunt 2. Has the ability to basically, as long as this Pokemon's in the active spot, put 5 more damage counters on your opponent's poisoned Pokemon. So this deck just has some sneaky things to be able to really cheese out some extra damage with obviously the Brute Bonnet. You're kind of just dishing out some damage, and then the Binding Mochi to hit for even more damage. Like if your Electrode is
Yeah.
damaged, you put the Binding Mochi on. You're just modifying. So like, pretty cool deck, and I can't remember what the. Let me see. They finished 38th place, so they had a pretty solid run for a $43 deck to do that. So that was pretty cool to see this Palkia Desnor build too, which, like if you spend any time looking at online meta, this is something that's not too surprising. I think it's obvious, like, someone was going to
You,
play it.
you
And
see it pop up from time to time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but kudos to Grafton for finishing ninth place with Palkia Desnoir. And obviously to the Greninja thrown in there as well. So wild to see this deck perform as well. I think it just goes to show how good of a player Grafton is too, and I expect to see that name more and more. But just to hit the run that they did is just so cool to see. And then obviously we're gonna save it for a little bit down the road too, but Guardy. And what I'm kind of terming it, I think a lot of people were terming it as Turbo Guardy because
Yeah.
I'll be real, to see a Guardy be that aggressive against a Lugia in the finals was just mind blowing to me. Typically, Guardy's the one that wants to just sit back, chill until you take those knockouts, and then it starts to do its thing. But um, Henry Chao had some other thoughts on how Guardy should operate too. So, but yeah, overall, pretty cool to see these decks. It's always fun to see people innovating. I am not that brave to bring an innovative deck. Like, I'm going to put my slight twist on it. Like, again, we talked about my Thornton on the Lugia list. Obviously, even that's not even innovative. Other people have done it, but kudos to these people for being brave and to just doing the thing with the deck they have fun playing and doing it well. So, pretty neat to see those decks succeed.
Yeah, the Palkia Desnar was one recently that you hit it on ladder from time to time, and then we
Yep.
kind of saw it slowly kind of show up at a few online limitless things, but just a cool deck to motor through. The 4 Night Stretcher and Pokestop engine is really cool because obviously you're not discarding your rare candies. So if you throw away a Dusknar and you have Irida, obviously, and you have the rare candy in hand, if you drew it or get it off Pokestop, just to grab it, boom, spread 13 damage counters, and obviously Palkia is very easy taking knockouts then because that's what Palkia is still just lacking from the not from where it was with the Shady Dealings
Yeah.
engine. Is things are just bigger now and it needs some help to get there. So pretty cool stuff to go through for. And I love to homebrew. Like that still is my passion of going through.
You're braver than
I
me.
just as Drew's always helped me. He goes, well, what are you gonna do when you play this matchup? And I just go, I don't know. It's like I got 60 cool cards. Like this is really fun. But I always thank Drew for bringing me down to earth and getting me going through. And like I said, this season is much more of some net decking and just trying to play the good meta decks and just play a lot of it. So then it feels more familiar. So
Yeah.
let's jump into your top cut. If you want to bring up our winning list of Turbo Guardy by Henry Chao and bring up the image, shout out to Henry. Uh, as we talked about, with all of the podcasts, us included, right? Where it's like, Guardy's dead. We did talk about it with Jesse of like maybe some Guardy heads, which Henry's clearly one of them. Like if they get in through, they hit the matchups that they need to. But I openly will state is this wasn't my vision for.
Not
I've
even
always felt
close.
rare candy. Yeah, I've always felt rare candy and a lot of Earthen Vessel and Guardies always felt really good. Um, so this, if you kind of just think back of NAIC from a few months ago, the skeleton of the deck is still there, but there's been some massive changes here. So it's still the normal 4-4-2 line of Ralts, Kirlia, and Gardevoir. Like that's never going to change. Your Drifloon, your Screamtail as your main attackers, right? You have only one Monkey Dory
Yeah.
and only one Darkness Energy, and then the Klefki. Especially in this format, Klefki is just a goaded card to start with.
So annoying.
And then I know, like with Worlds and everything, Rainy Greninja was kind of all over the map. Rainy Greninja is just to me is a staple.
I agree.
With
Yeah.
that, and if you hit the bad matchups with Stall or whatever, it's just like fine, you go through. But Pheasant Dippity, which is good. You didn't actually see Henry play it that often in the top. In the finals, but it did show, and because Henry I think was on stream 3 times this regional, and then for Anno pretty much staple. But then here's where it really changes, right? So only 2 Arvin, 2 research, which is cool because I think way back Guardian the days, like I know Tord usually played to researchers too, but it's
Right.
kind of come full circle. A boss, and then you still have to run the Turos because I think that's just smart. Normal 4 buddy puffin, 3 earthen vessel. Normally there's maybe only 1 to 2 tops, and then 2 ultra ball, 2 nest ball, your standard 2 counter catcher, 2 super rod, 2 rare candy. This is where it kind of deviates. That's really cool. Rare candy and Guardies just always felt good. I know uh, a certain shuffle squad, Josh was like, "Stop playing Rare Candy and Gardevoir. Like you're not going through." So I should go see if he tweeted. It's just been like, I admit to being wrong because this list is cool. And then the one night stretcher, and then the coolest thing, right, is not unfair stamp,
Yep.
not prime catcher, not a hero's cape, not anything. Secret
The
box. And when
box.
you think about what we discussed a few different times, and I've I'll repeat myself sadly, sorry listeners and watchers, but it's like Secret Box is just one of the coolest cards ever printed with what it does. And it being on an A spec, when you think about it, it's like, well, wait, discarding cards is good with guarding, especially if it's energy, because that's even better. But to go get everything, right? It just really helps with kind of piecing those together. And this is where it cools because then the one Pel pad, and then this is where like is the coolest thing. 3 Bravery Charm, only 1 Evo, 1 Pokemon Lead headquarters, which is cool because just a stadium you typically think of Artisan, and then your 7 Psychic and one Darkness Energy. So shout out Henry. This list is needs like a memorial built for it for this specific because essentially this is the only Shrouded Fable. Obviously we had Worlds as its own, but like this is the only regional that we get. The
Okay.
next one that we were looking is 28th, which is Dortmund, and then there's a special event in Brazil, but that's going to be in Stellar Crown format. So this is like one of those when you talk about retro, because I know you're a big retro head. It's just like
Yep.
we're not going to be talking about Shrouded Fable, but it's like we need to remember this list, and specifically
Absolutely.
Henry for going undefeated. Yeah, he had a few ties, but going undefeated with this when literally the entire community was like Gardevoir's dead. Like you're wasting your time bringing that in. And Henry just is a go-to player. And the coolest thing is I know I rewatch it pretty quickly, like at 1.5 or 1.25 speed. But if I did slow it down to like just normal speed, and he was playing fast.
Yeah.
And shout
I
out to
mean,
him because he was piecing them together. He wasn't slow playing or being overly thorough, as we've seen some other Gardevoir players, famous Gardevoir players play. Like he was moving and he had the lines. And just looking at this list, I really love it. Like it literally needs to be a memorial made for it and enshrined, and it is obviously on Limitless. I'm in PCTG Legends to ever go back, but really cool. I don't know if you have any thoughts to try to hit on as much as I could. Like it makes sense. I would suggest anyone to go back if you're thinking of how to play Guardy. This is your masterclass. Go watch Henry play and watch what he does. And you shouted out the game one, right? Going
yeah.
through putting on pressure of taking out a Luminion, turn 2 for him. Dude, that's pretty sweet. When have we ever seen Gardevoir be the one playing a boss on turn 2 to
Right.
take out a Luminion? Or excuse me,
Crazy.
Kieran had to start a Luminion. So
Yep.
him just
Yeah.
going, oh yeah, rare candy. I'll accelerate 3 energy to myself. I don't care that I take
Uh-huh.
6 damage counters because you have nothing to do for this.
Right.
And I think you saw Kieran like, oh,
Yep.
going through it, and the
Because
3
at that
bravery
moment, he
charm.
knew he was in trouble.
Yeah, yeah, and the biggest mission is where the heck is Manaphy, right? You
Yeah.
can't you can't play Gardevoir in Reggie Drago's format because Kieran's just always going to beat you, and he just Saber House said it best, right? Is like screw it. They always have Manaphy and canceling Cologne. So
Right.
why not just play a whole bunch of Bravery Charms and it doesn't matter because I'm all
Yep.
over 110 and going through. So shout out to him.
Yeah.
Probably rambled on too long about the Gardevoir list, but it is
It
Gardevoir's
is.
just has always been a cool archetype. Pokemon loves to make psychic types very, very good, both in the video games and in TCG. But this is something very unique, and I can't wait to see what the other podcasts in the community talk about it. Because and hopefully Henry is on a podcast that gets a lot of views. I'm curious of what his thought process is of making this list of just
Yeah.
turboing it out and come out guns blazing and still have the counter catchers. Still have the Ionos, right, to be disruptive, but cool, and shout out for Henry. This is a goated list for sure.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything else to add other than just like, in a format that everybody claims is the turbo format, the way that Guardy survives is adapting and becoming turbo deck itself, and that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what he did here. And yeah, I think you had mentioned briefly about it, but Pokemon League HQ is such a cool inclusion into this list.
I talked
Like,
about it in Reggie Drago with Jesse on the
yep,
podcast, but
yep,
didn't see it coming in Guardy, but makes
nope,
sense because his basic attackers are
absolutely,
always going to have extra damage on him anyway. So
uh huh,
cool for him to
yeah,
have
so
that
cool.
little measure, yeah, nugget to put in.
Yeah, yeah. So let's jump over to the next list then. Obviously, the second place, or in my heart, the first place list. I would have loved to have seen Lugia fly to the highest peak of this tournament. Unfortunately, Kieran wasn't able to accomplish that too, and he had his biggest foe of the day, obviously with Guardy. But let me open it up here. Again,
Yeah,
pretty standard for what we expect out of this format's Lugia. Um, and really, when I look at his list versus mine, it's just a couple cards off. He does not have the bundle and he doesn't have the Carmine. Instead, he opted for a heavier boss count. Um, and then, yeah, like, again, pretty straightforward for the most part. The 3-3 Lugia V Star, which many of us had gone to. In the past, we've done a 4-3 and even a 4-4, but with just as tight as this list is, we kind of need to um, parse it down just a bit. He opted for the 2-2 Cinchino line with the one weirder, which is what I chose to go with as well. We saw other lists doing a 3-3 Cinchino line, no weird deer. Debatable on what's the better of the two routes, but I think it's clear. The 2-2-1 lineup here between the Cinchino and weird deer is pretty strong. Then he has the typical 2 of the fish. Such a broken card in this deck, and especially now with the inclusion of Legacy Energy, you can actually use it to attack, Aqua Return it, recycle those Luminions, grab another boss, and just makes the deck so aggressive. Possibly one of my favorite inclusions in this Lugia list, and for the longest time I was a massive hater of Squawkabilly in Lugia. I think there had been a few prior to Worlds when Rahul kind of made it popular and things like that too. And I just never really found a way to fit it in, and it never really made sense. But the more and more it started to come to be, and just seeing how strong Squawkabilly was, like everybody talks about Lugia as just not setting up, or Lugia is its biggest enemy because it refuses to set up. Well, how do you fix that? You throw a Squawkabilly in there, you throw in some nest balls to guarantee you get the Squawkabilly, and you're setting up most of the time. And then, we saw Kieran throughout some streams too, just really just have it all. It was so heartbreaking to watch the stream though against Henry when I see double Archeops and Ultra Ball in his hand. He had Jock and he had Ultra Ball in
Jack, yeah.
hand. And then like I love the casters too. They're like, all right, got to put on a sad face, Kieran. Got to put on a sad face. You got to make it look like you don't have anything good, so he won't want to Iona you. But unfortunately, of course, it happened because Guardy just always has it, and more than likely, Guardy's gonna either Arven on turn 1 or they're gonna Iona on turn 1, and Henry went
And
with both.
specifically
So no,
Henry's list, right, is he's going to play
right? He's
Iono turn one
exactly
going second so many times because he's only running two
the two
Arvins.
Arven. Yeah.
And so
So
even though Kieran only had a 4 card hand, I also, because I just wanted to see it go game 3 because I think it
yep,
was a fascinating matchup
yeah,
if Lugia can get set up the way that it needs to set up to. But I
yeah,
just think a different Guardy list on a different day, I think Kieran has a good shot at taking it. But
yeah.
specifically Henry Chao's version of Guarders, just like, boy,
Just
I don't see what he can do here. It's always going to have a response. But Kieran
yeah.
played amazing. He had some big
Oh,
brain plays.
absolutely.
I
He
know
had
that you
some.
talked about. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a massive big brain plays. Not obviously we didn't see any really come to fruition in the Guardy matchup, but
yeah,
in his matchup against Emmett Hurley too, which we'll show his list in just a moment. But the first big brain play was that he slammed the DTE onto the Lugia V Star and swung, so he wouldn't take the knockout. And I think it's funny too because the casters even called us out. Like Emmett looked over at the judge and was like, "Wait, can he do that?" Because it was a situation where if he takes the knockout, then Emmett just promotes a Petulant, and Petulant swings, and they take the final 2 prizes.
yep.
And so it really just put Kieran in the position to just to steal the game, right? Just by being smart. And I think earlier when he was playing, I think it was against Charizard. I wasn't watching this, but I'd heard the casters make note of it. Earlier in the day, he was playing against the Charizard, and that was the one. Like, I think he did lose that game
Yeah.
against Charizard, and it was because he went a little too aggressive and went all in, which at times is, detrimental to Lugia to go all in. You pitch too many resources, you kind of have to get a bit aggressive, and it can come back to bite you. And so I think Kieran obviously learned from that and played a
Yeah.
little bit slower, played a little bit more methodical. So that was pretty cool. And another big brain play that he did too, which also to point out here, which is different from my list, he was playing 3 missed energies versus I had 2, which obviously that came in it made it so handy for him in his matchup against Emmett too, where actually I'll save that for the next round too. But yeah, overall just
Yeah.
a super clean, really really efficient Lugia list, and right, that's how you win with Lugia. You find the best way. Obviously Rahul has an incredible list, but this one to me is my favorite of the two, just simply for the fact that it's clean, it's consistent, and it just does what Lugia does best, and it gets set up. So yeah, so really solid list, which we can jump briefly into Rahul's, and then I'll jump over to Emmett's. But Rahul's essentially just ran, what he ran at Worlds. I think he didn't change a single thing. He had the Raikou in there, which is pretty cool. The 1/1 Cinchina line with the weirder too. So obviously he had to make some room elsewhere. The Earthen Vessel and
Yep.
the Lightning Energy, which those are the primary differences there. But he still ran the 4 of Boss. He did include the bundle. So another really great list too. I think Rahul has a masterclass that he put out there with this as well. So if you're interested in Rahul's list, which I do think the Raikou in Stellar Crown format actually is a really good
Oh yeah.
inclusion, because
Oh yeah.
Lugia will be hitting, or Raikou will be hitting for so much more damage when the benches are a lot more full too. So I personally don't believe that Lugia is dead just yet, so I will be testing it, but I do think I'm going to find a way to include the Raikou, the Earthen Vessel, and a Lightning back into my list as well. So not that
Agreed.
Rahul's list doesn't warrant some time. I want to, for the sake of time, keep moving along. Let's
Hmm.
focus in on to Emmett. Emmett's list, he was the 3rd place finisher. He played the Roaring Moon, the Turbo Roaring Moon, with the Baby Moon, the one of Baby Moon. But again, really cool lists. I don't think there was a ton different outside of the one from Senosuke that came in 2nd in Worlds. But again, I think it just goes to show, like, when this deck does what the deck is supposed to do, it's one of the stronger decks out there, because you can just wipe the board, right? It's like Giratina V-Star. You can just obliterate a
Yeah.
Pokemon off
Just
the
delete.
face of
Delete. Hit the
yeah,
delete button.
right,
Yeah. Just literally
exactly.
hit the delete button unless they have a missed energy in front of you. Just you
Right.
are now gone.
You're just gone.
Yeah.
And so I think what Emmett did here was fantastic. And then he threw in, to me, like, it's not much, but it was enough. The enhanced hammer, largely in there for the Lugia matchup. I think he made a good call in understanding that there was going to be a lot of Lugia present at this event. So he threw the enhanced hammer off so that he could do just like he did against Kieran and remove that missed energy and be able to take that knockout. However, Kieran, being the incredibly smart player that he is, after that game, he knew that Enhanced Hammer, so obviously he learned Enhanced Hammer was in the deck.
Yep.
So in the next game in the set, Kieran threw Double Mist on Lugia V-Star, effectively rendering that Enhanced Hammer completely worthless. So again, shout out to Kieran for being just such a brilliant mind. Obviously an incredible player who's had a long history in the TCG of doing really well. So with experience comes that kind of wisdom too. But no, kudos to Emmett for running that enhanced hammer, and I genuinely think that enhanced hammer, if we could go back and watch some of his run throughout the day, I would suspect that list or that enhanced hammer came in handy quite a bit. And then other than that, just being able to hit everything when he needs to and do the thing that Roaring Moon does best and just go.
Yeah.
He was, if you want to watch sequencing in a complete masterclass of how to sequence a deck, he did it so phenomenally. And just, that round against Kieran too, of how he churned through his deck to guarantee that he hit exactly what he needed to hit in that enhanced hammer. I think that was game 1. Again, I was in the car, so
Yes.
I couldn't really pay too close attention to it, but he needed to hit enhanced hammer to win. That's exactly what he did. He was able to sequence it. He's able to churn through his deck, literally see, I don't know, probably over half of his deck to get to where he needed. But it was extremely impressive too. So well done to Emmett and the just the absolute clinic that he put on and how to sequence a deck properly too.
Yeah.
So Um,
Turbo Dark is always fun.
yep, yep. And there was one other Lugia list too. I'm not going to jump into that, but again, kudos to Steven um, for putting on a great show too. His was more traditional, um, kind of like Kieran. He had the bundle though and the 2-2 lineup. So yeah, really, really impressive stuff. Top 8 was full of amazing, amazing lists on obviously some of your favorites in the Reggie Draco. So we'll jump over to that.
Yeah, we saw obviously its number as kind of everyone predicted from Worlds, just because it felt like the safest play to do well at Worlds, which I think is, and again, top Worlds, top players playing at Worlds, and so here you kind of just get more decks to come in. I think we have
Mm-hmm.
Rowan's because he finished just slightly above Ian's, and looking through, very standard. It's been 3-3 Reggie Drago and Reggie Drago Vizar, 3 Teal Mask Overpon. And for these, I'll just kind of keep jumping back and forth just for audio listeners as well too that can always see. The cool things, so they both only ran one Dragapult EX between them, which is different, right? Because everyone's like, you got to use two. If you want to play Dragapult, this is the best way to play it. So only one of those. Your Tina V still is in there as your big, one-shot potential, and then Gudra, both playing Gudra, and that was kind of one of the things that people were like, that's cuttable. I just have always felt Gudra is such a safe
Yeah, it's
play
such a
of an
great card.
attacker, specifically like even versus Charizard too. Like ideally, sometimes you don't actually want to take that first prize card if you can't do the pulled play to try to get two with the Halucha, but like just doing a rolling iron and forcing them to have to gust around you is really good to start because one, it keeps your Reggie Drago alive at a clean 280 to continue to set up the math that you need to. Kirim is a must have, obviously. Both still playing the Muse, both still playing the Pheasantipede as well too, and then Squawkabilly to help with your setups. They obviously, as we saw with the rise of kind of the turbo big basic decks, both put in a Radiant Charizard, which maybe wasn't always included in all the Worlds deck list. And then both playing the Cleffa. It sounds from other Reggie Drago people that were on podcasts talking about it, they just said Cleffa is such a beautiful card in that, especially if you're going second sometimes. And then Halucha also going through. Now Rowan's, I'll talk about because literally insert for research boss for Ultra Ball, or two boss, but for Ultra Ball, for Nest Ball, for Vessel, for E Switch, that sort of thing. So I'll just talk about the recovery cards because everyone's still going to play Prime Catcher and Switch right now, and their energy counts were still 3 Fire, 7 Grass. So now that everyone knows that, I can talk a little bit about the cool things from what I've seen between the two. So Rowan included a bundle as well too, which I really liked, even though it's not necessarily a gust option, but it's one of those to pop down of get something brought into the active that just helps get around some stall matchups, obviously with maybe Q or something of that nature. But if there's something that you kind of damaged as well too that's in the active and you just need to clean up with a Dragapult, I do like the inclusion of bundle. That felt kind of cool. I did like Roan. This is where I've been playing Reggie Drago now too, even in this format of playing 3 Iono. Because sometimes, and we'll get into recovery cards a little bit later, just because you really run to 56 cards really, really quickly in Reggie Drago. And so those last 4 slots, you just wish you could have a 61st card. But 3 Iona is felt sometimes really good in terms of continuing to streamline. And sometimes if you've had a deck search, there's just some things that even though you have a really, really good ability to get 2 things back, it just, you can't ditch all your resources is what I found with Carlos with some stuff is just, I don't want to play research, but if I don't, I just don't get to do anything this turn. So I do like the third Iono inclusion. And then their energy counts, like Super Rod sometimes was always, everyone was going to play one, but it seems like post Worlds now, they both played 2 Super Rod, which is really cool. And then that's all Rowan played. And he had the really cool inclusion of Collapse Stadium because I
Yeah.
think that, Sinnoh was very popular among there because I just think, again, it's so cool that we're in the same format, but kind of different
Yeah.
results, right? Whereas Worlds Lugia was the third most played deck, I think.
Mm-hmm.
If memory serves me right, obviously
Yeah,
it
it was.
dipped
You're right.
back down, but so you had the Collapse Stadium, which is cool. I feel like that's a kind of a good inclusion in Stellar Crown, and then Ian massively respected and had 2 stadiums, which is almost where
Right.
Reggie Drago might have been at during closer to NAIC time and played a Jamming Tower and Temple. It's cool that he put in Jamming Tower because not a lot of Raging Bolt plays tools, but Zard plays a ton of them. And specifically, I should have went through and looked ahead of time if he played any Guardies, but pretty cool. And Ian ran a Superior Energy Retrieval for one more recovery, so no Night Stretcher in this case. So it is cool just to see it, and we still continue to see good players. Specifically, those two are very darn good players, regional winners, obviously.
And a world
So
champion.
it's yep, and a world
Yeah.
champion, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, and seniors
Yep.
as well. So it's really
Yep.
cool to see where good decks and Reggie Drago. Like when we say BDIF, it's just because its matchup spread is that's like where Guardy was at for a while too, right? Just doesn't really have a bad matchup, and you get set
Right.
up and hit the cards that you need to. It was fun, watching it on stream just as someone that's obviously considering for Louisville. It looks like it might have some tough times with just and again, Japan is a best of one format, and Raging
Right.
Bolt in
Right.
a best of one format is going to go boom boom. But it's just something that obviously is on the table just because that's what I have the most reps with.
Yep.
And if I can feel comfortable with it, with the matchups, and knowing that I can get through 3 games, as you talked about, even
Mm-hmm.
if you have some people maybe stalling a little bit, it's just something that I know is like, all right, I'm going to get to 3 games no matter what in 50 minutes and go through. So,
Yep.
and then rounding out,
Well,
we
real
talked
quick,
about the Palkia Dusnor, but
sorry,
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
One quick
Yep.
thing too. I think this is an important call out, and it was interesting because you had mentioned earlier that Henry Chao did not include the mana fee. Neither of
Yep.
these two Drago lists included the canceling clone, which I think is important
Mm-hmm.
to call out too, because like for so long
Thank you.
we saw a lot of Drago running canceling clone. I even ran it in my list too. But it kind of shows like the shift in the style of play that Drago had. Like, whereas early on people were like, oh, Kyurem, Trifrost, this is so broken, we can wipe the board, but we got to get rid of Mana Fee first, so we're going to throw in a canceling clone. But I think the more people realize the Trifrost may not have always been the best play, especially early on, because it could really put you in a bad position if you have no follow up after that. Maybe you
Bingo.
burnt all your resources to get to that point, you used all your E switches, you legacy start, like so I think some of the best players realized that Trifrost maybe not have wasn't always the best play. Obviously at Worlds we saw Bradner really just hitting it off with back to back Trifrost and things like that too. But that to me stood out the most, or not the most, but that was one of the big things that stood out to me in these lists, was that neither of them were running Cologne, which
It's
for the longest
fascinating.
time had
Like,
been a staple.
how did they come to that
Yeah,
conclusion, right? Like, and that it is, it's one of those episode topics I always want to go through, and we're not discussing tournaments and stuff like that. Is
yeah,
like just kind of getting into the mind of the top players of what was the thought process on that? Where did that
I
come through?
know,
Because it's just like you have to play Canceling Clone, right? Whereas like same thing with Gardevoir, you can't play Rare Candy, and then
right,
we see top players go against the grain, and
right,
obviously they reap the rewards. So
yep.
I think we covered control, and we shouted out the Palkia Dustnor. So I think uh, we can just go through. But cool event. I'm glad your experience went well, obviously, and we got to see some top players playing. I'm excited because it hit me when I was chatting and playing against Carlos. Is Louisville's 1 month away, and it just feels like that
Yeah.
1 month in terms of being a dad and having real life responsibilities and stuff like that too. I just told him it's just like I don't think I'm massively prepared for this yet, but it's like I'm excited for the event to come, right, and get
Yeah.
to officially meet and hang out with Carlos. Obviously, known him and stayed with and roomed with Steven at AIC. Again, shout out for the cool T-shirts that his wife literally threw together in like 4 or 5 days. And then we have another member from the Ohio region staying with us as well too. So I'm just excited for the event itself. It's just in terms of doing the testing and prepping and stuff like that. It's just like holy cow. And I just vowed to myself is like I'm just going to have to force myself to play live, even though I don't want to. But like I just need to get games and reps in, just because in terms of testing 1-on-1 with myself with 2 decks and shuffling and going through, like that's just you're not going through the best resources of your time. Any last nuggets for Baltimore that you have for the folks, Michael?
Yeah, no, I think I'm excited that the season is officially here. 2025 is upon us. We got to move past Worlds. Baltimore went great. A Canadian did not win as much as other people thought they were going to do it again after winning last year when Andrew Strada won. So we
Hmm.
kept it here in the States this time around. But no, super fun. I'm definitely bummed that I won't be at Louisville, but excited for the season, cups, challenges, and more majors to come. So no, it was a great seeing everybody. And I got to connect with quite a few people. Shout out to um, the homies at the Beach Court podcast. Got to meet up with Maddox and Eric, so that was cool. Got to play some retro
Oh,
with
nice.
them, and yeah, always good to meet people and see some people. Got to see Jesse. Actually got some world swag off of him to give to Graham. So Graham now has some Hawaii deck boxes thanks to Jesse. Got to
Oh,
see
sick.
Dre. So it's always cool to get to see all the homies and the people you know. But
Were you able to hand out some, did the one
yeah,
I'm hoping that my PCS swag arrived. Okay, all
yep,
right.
it did.
'Cause I
Yep, and I
forgot we
handed some
recorded
out
on
too.
Monday
Yeah,
night and it
yep.
was gonna be in on Tuesday, so
Yeah, yeah. So
I'll
yeah,
get
we
more
got
coming
some
your
out.
way.
Steven got some. We got some stamps out. A buddy of mine that I've known on Twitter who've seen on the online scene, Josh Chambrano, got to give some swag to him too. So yeah, it was always
Sweet,
cool to give it
awesome.
out. Yeah.
Good, and I will come stocked Thursday or at Louisville. So anyone that sees me, and I'll talk about that before. But just to
By the
round
way,
out
the
our
pink
oh,
dice
go
are
ahead.
pretty broken too. So definitely make sure you get some more pink dice if you don't have them.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to hit up Pokey Brews and plead because I NAIC and I didn't mind at the time, but then when I like was packing up to come home that Sunday night, I was like, wait, where did all the pink dye? I was like, I guess that's literally the only color went, but yeah,
Yeah.
pretty cool. And I appreciate Drew and
Yeah.
Pokey Brews for having that set up for us for stuff to go through. So we'll have to get another dice reorder here at some point next year. So rounding out, I'll just do a quick PCS update before we say our goodbyes. We are starting our round 6 out of 7 for our standard challenge that we're currently in. I talked about it last week in the pod, but I'll say it again. We can play Stellar Crown decks, create 3 deck lists, submit it to your opponent, and go through. This one we did not do a Swiss. We just did a round robin, so everyone will play everyone, obviously, which is fun. And whoever's in first place will win the Stellar Crown ETB, and then I'll send them some PCS swag, on top of that as well too. If there is a tie just based on points, I'm not going to look at resistance or whatever that says. If it's just literally a couple players at uh, be 7 rounds, so 5-2 for example, or 6-1, 2 players. I'm just going to have those guys play a best of 3, or excuse me, 1 match, 3 games, and winner take all basically. And then I looked ahead because Pokemon loves to jam new list, or excuse me, new
New sets.
sets
Yep.
down our throat so frequently. Thank you. I don't know why I was having a brain fart, but I looked ahead and kind of just looked at the calendar, and I think what we'll do is the was week of September 30th we'll start our Stellar Crown season challenge, and we'll probably just go back to a conventional like 4 Swiss rounds and then top cut to 4, and
Yeah.
just have those guys play. And then Surging Sparks, as I'm glad that you reminded me, is that's probably going to be our meta for a really long time. I'm probably going to do that's our unique one that I have that I kind of teased last, and so I'll get more information out to the Discord and on this podcast obviously as well too as that gets near. So I just want to transition for our thanking everyone that's a Patreon member, continue to help support the show. I appreciate every listen, as we've probably since I've gotten you on, Michael. It is fun to see our listenership continue to rise each week. So I know our YouTube video with Jesse actually starting to get near that over triple digits. So that's really
Yeah.
fun from considering
Pretty
where we
rad.
started. So I love doing this with you, and I
Yeah,
love
man.
getting to talk to these people that join the podcast and just talk, because I think in terms of our community space, I know there's a lot of Pokedads. We're not the only Pokedads out there, but it is just so much fun to find people from all walks of life that still have these same values that this community has, where um, you know everyone's going to take each other with a casual way, and but also be competitive, and at the end just be good homies that you you can play a match and then, hey, let's go get a beer after the regional, which I fully plan to do with whoever's in Louisville, from there, whether they're staying with us or not as well too. So want to thank everyone that listens to the show. If you leave a review, that obviously helps just this grow, in terms of both YouTube and the podcast itself for the audio. You can find me everywhere basically with on X or Twitter with PCS_pod. I appreciate the likes and retweets that we get whenever we release an episode or just some thoughts. Twitch, again, it's there. We're working on it. Just please allow us some times, because Michael and I, as we said, we are dads and we have children. Or I will have children. I just have one kid right now, and he's a handful. But Twitch is just PCS Podcast, no space, just straight up the podcast name. Patreon, again, thank you for everyone goes through. It's patreon.com/PCS Podcast. And then youtube.com. It's really, really easy. If you just go to youtube.com if you want to go subscribe and like and listen. Thank you, Michael, for reminding everyone of, hey, while you're there, please like us and turn on notification. It just helps kind of us get into the algorithm of getting suggestions along the side. If you're watching another Pokemon related content, so out of nowhere you see the and you did awesome with the thumbnail for Jesse's episode.
I was pretty proud of that
and
one, actually.
Actually, because we got the him at Worlds, right? So that was really cool. I forgot to give you props on Twitter Space. I'm just like, hey, Michael, this is a really good job for the thumbnail. But youtube.com at the PCS Podcast, all spelled out. So, yeah, that's how you can find us, and we appreciate everyone that listens. Michael, if you can plug yourself, then we'll let the people get back to their lives.
Yep. Come yap with me on Twitter at Michael, or excuse me, at mradioptcg. You can find me there. Hit me up in the DMs, all that good stuff. And then, I'm always there yapping, always there chatting. It's a good time. I love getting to meet new people. So shout out to those who I got to meet in Baltimore for the first time, and for the Twitter homies that I got to finally meet too. So yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you next week.
Peace.